And so there's two gigs still open, Washington and Seattle. Fair to say that their targets are coaching this weekend? That's why these jobs are still open? What do you think?
Not necessarily. I would say with Washington, they've got a bunch of interviews set up next week with the guys who are still in the playoffs. You're seeing Anthony Weaver on Monday night. The Lions are making their guys available in Detroit Tuesday and Wednesday. So somewhere in there, the Commanders are scheduled to meet with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And then Dan Quinn also has an interview. I think that one's going to be on Tuesday. So they had a second interview with Bobby Slowick. They, still need to do one more interview to comply with the Rooney Rule. So right now they could not make a hire even if they wanted to. So I do anticipate the Commanders are going to get into next week. With the Seahawks, they've been going through their second interviews this week. They had Patrick Graham. They had Mike Kafka. They had Dan Quinn. Today they were supposed to be having Raheem Morris, who became unavailable. Adrio Avero is the last one that's currently scheduled. That second interview is going to happen tomorrow. With John Schneider, he's waited 14 years to be able to run this process. And so from everything I've been told, it seems like Schneider and the people in Seattle are enjoying getting to know different people and getting to hear different philosophies and understand how different things work in other buildings. I mean, Pete Carroll hired John Schneider back in 2010. I know kind of Pete overblew things a little bit there, basically talking about, Johnny, you've been waiting 14 years for this opportunity. I mean, he's had Schneider in a closet somewhere this entire time. He's been very much involved in the personnel operation and done a lot of things in the draft and otherwise. But this is, that opportunity to really try to get this thing right. I know there's been a lot of speculation about Dan Quinn, the natural connections to John and to Pete. I've never gotten the sense that this was all means to an end and they're just checking boxes and then they're going to hire Dan Quinn. He could be Seattle's next head coach, but the other guys that they're meeting with here are all real candidates too. And that interview process potentially, if they're going to see Ben Johnson again, could go into next week.
Then where does the 2021 Coach of the Year fit in here, man? I mean, where does Vrabel fit in? Could he be on the sidelines too?
Unless the Commanders go back kind of on where they've been headed throughout the course of their process, Mike Vrabel also may well be a coach without a team for 2024. I know that there's been a lot of local media speculations. I was asked about it on Seattle radio a couple of days ago about Mike Vrabel. Never say never, Rich, in any of this. If you had, strapped me down and said, is Dave Canales going to be a head coach in the NFL a few weeks ago, I would have said, no, I don't think so. I mean, everybody thinks highly of Dave Canales in terms of the energy. He did a great job this year, especially down the stretch with Baker Mayfield in that offense. But that's a name that when he got the offensive coordinator job in Tampa a year ago, it was a surprise to a lot of people within the league. Good for Dave that he's getting that opportunity in Carolina. You never say never, but I don't really anticipate the Seahawks search going the Mike Vrabel direction. And this is something we talked about on the Insiders today on NFL Plus and NFL Network, where when you look through the names that have been hired this year and like what's the running theme? Obviously, it's a more diverse list than we've had in prior years, but it's also a list of guys who bring a lot of positive energy to the room. When you think about what Raheem Morris is, you think about Dave Canales's reputation. Gerard Mayo is basically a motivational speaker. Antonio Pierce, there's certainly more edge. He's a Raider, but it's still like an uplifting, bring the locker room together type of a guy. Jim Harbaugh is the outlier in this entire list. Brian Callahan's the one I didn't mention, going to Tennessee, another really positive reinforcement environment. That's what he comes from in Cincinnati. Jim Harbaugh got a text from a coach yesterday saying, the Chargers players have no idea what they're in for. And I said, well, what do you mean? And the response was, he is literally a robot sent from outer space to coach football. Harbaugh's in a different category. He's 60 years old. He has won everywhere, but that's a different, unique style of environment. Everybody else comes from this kind of positive culture building type of a place. And I think that that's the impact of a Dan Campbell in Detroit and the success that he is having. I think that that is the impact of a DeMeco Ryans in Houston as well. Guys who know how to set a program where guys want to come to work every day. And that's not to say that the way Bill Belichick has done things forever is wrong. The way that Mike Vrabel has done things forever is wrong. It's not to say Vic Fangio, who was essentially pushed out in Miami, he's had success at various points through the course of his career. When you dig around on why Vic Fangio is not the defensive coordinator in Miami. It's not that his scheme had become stale. It's that he didn't have relationships with players like a lot of coaches do now. So that's one of the running themes, I think, is that this generation of players, does the Bill Belichick style, the Mike Vrabel style, the Vic Fangio style necessarily work? Again, Vrabel won a lot of games for a long time, lost 18 of his last 24 in Tennessee. I just think that positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement culture, when team presidents and owners are looking at this right now, people like Amy Adams Strunk are talking about collaboration and alignment. You kind of end up with these guys who have operated as football gods and have had a great deal of control over their programs. Maybe that's just not the way that certain organizations want to set up their programs right now.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.